just so you know, we've been asked if there's going to be a recording, and so I'll go ahead and record right now, and I'll play the slideshow at the end again. So for people who want to, if you want to watch this again, that will also be on the recording as well. All right. So first we have to share their memories is Catherine Goldman. It's Maggie's daughter. And hopefully they're in alphabetical order here. Oops. No, it's not doing it yet. All right. And again, here's Catherine. I'm going to spotlight her.
You can be with me.
And I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Yeah, being not religious, we had to figure out something a little bit different. So I looked up lots of things online and I found this poem. So this is an excerpt from a poem called A Life That Matters. Ready or not, someday it will all come to an end. There will be no more sunrises, no minutes, hours, days. It won't matter where you came from or on what side of the tracks you lived. At the end, whether you were beautiful or brilliant, male or female, even your skin color won't matter. So what will matter? How will the value of your days be measured? What will matter is not what you bought, but what you built. Not what you got, but what you gave. What will matter is not your successes, but your significance. What will matter is not what you learned, but what you taught. What will matter is every act of integrity, compassion, courage, or sacrifice that enriched, empowered, or encouraged others. What will matter is not your competence, but your character. What will matter is not how many people you knew, but how many will feel a lasting loss when you're gone. What will matter is not your memories, but the memories that live in those who loved you. Living a life that matters doesn't happen by accident. It's not a matter of circumstance, but of choice. Choose to live a life that matters. Author unknown. My mom really did choose to live a life that mattered. She was a practical and pragmatic woman who was giving of herself and her time. An ethical person, she always did the right thing, even when no one was watching. When I was little, I saw her as different from other mothers. And when you're a child, different is not good. She was older, heavier, more serious, not into chit chat. She worked on important initiatives. When I was in junior high, we were assigned a book to complete called 30 Days to a Better Vocabulary, where I learned the word phlegmatic. I was amazed there was a word for her because she seemed so different, but if there was a word, it meant there were others. Phlegmatic means of a person having an unemotional and stolidly calm disposition, and that was my mom. She never seemed overtly overjoyed, however, she could fake it. When I was little, she would occasionally indulge me and play what we called game show contestant. And when I asked her to, she would jump up and down and clap her hands and say, yay! It was the complete opposite of her, but she did it for me. Since she was so unemotional, one of my main goals as a child was to try to get my mother to laugh. I considered it a victory if I could get a chuckle out of her. When she would tuck me into bed at night and sit on my bed, I would try to recount things in a funny way. I could make her laugh so hard that the whole bed would shake. I loved that. She often taught me things without my knowledge. We would play the grandma game while driving home from wherever we were. She would pretend to be an old, forgetful woman, and I would have to tell her how to get home, which road to take, where to turn, etc. Now, I recall that she sometimes made a mistake, turning left instead of right, so I think she cheated, but I grew confident in the knowledge that I had those skills. She really helped me believe in myself. She did not teach me to sew or embroider. Rather, she built her own sofas, taught me to build bookcases, measured twice, cut once, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, how to use wood glue before screws, how to snake a toilet, and that we could fix our own leaky faucets. My mother's favorite authors were Virginia Woolf, E.E. Cummings, and Limericks by Edward Lear. As far as vocabulary development, my mother kept a list of words handy: balderdash, preposterous, malarkey, poppycock, baloney, all synonyms for bullshit. Educated people had a plethora of words at their disposal and did not need to use profanity, except sometimes. She sent me to Friendship Day Camp, started by her friend Ezra Weintraub, where I spent my childhood. This camp focused on teaching children about different cultures, in particular Hispanic, African American, Asian Pacific, and Jewish. She volunteered every summer to interview prospective campers and families, and I got to play with everyone and make new and diverse friends before camp even started. The anthem of the camp was the song "I'm Proud to Be Me," which taught me to understand and respect those who were different from myself. I sang this song every camp day from ages 5 to 18. I want to share the lyrics with you because they really embodied her view of the world. I'm proud to be me, but I also see you're just as proud to be you. We might look at things a bit differently, but lots of good people do. That's just human nature, so I will respect you for being as human as I. We'll get as we give if we live and let live, and we'll all get along if we try. I'm proud to be me, but I also see you're just as proud to be you. It's true. You're just as proud to be you. While I say that she always seemed unemotional, she really did have passion. She was passionate about helping others to have a better life, righting wrongs, and teaching people how to stand up for themselves by educating them in the law and forming unions. She always had a pocket constitution handy to give to someone. When I was a child, the FBI bugged our phone due to her activism, quest for social justice, and fervent belief in a national health program. She was the founding member of the Peace and Freedom Party and ran for Congress in 1990. I remember those long drives to Delano to take the farm workers food and clothes. She worked alongside Cesar Chavez to get better pay, housing, and health care. I was quite familiar with the adages, si se puede, yes we can, and huelga, strike. Her friend Dora made clay jewelry with the United Farm Workers logo on it to raise money. It was 15 years before I was allowed to legally have a grape. Although I wasn't there for it, my mom told me stories of how she helped desegregate the downtown Bullock's tea room. My mother was an important part of the Los Angeles Herald newspaper's 10-year strike. I still remember her good friend Charlie, who was a machinist there. My mother took me along to walk on numerous picket lines, to rallies, and attend political meetings. I remember when the Safeway employees went on strike and we were making signs to bring. I wanted to write "Safeway sucks" because it was alliterative, but she wouldn't let me. She said it was better to write "Safeway has unfair labor practices," but it didn't have the same ring to it. She gave me the opportunity to flourish artistically and dabble in being a graphic artist when she asked me to design innumerable flyers and handouts for her political events. It was fun to use the round pen on the wax-covered stencil paper and run and troubleshoot the mimeograph machine all by myself. More skills. I am so proud to share these stories about my mom, who was really a living legend and an actual historic figure. Even after she left this earth, my mom continued to be altruistic, giving the gift of her body to UCLA for the purpose of advancing medical science and research. In this way, the legacy of Maggie Phair will continue to benefit humankind in a most unique way. She will also continue to educate young people through the Maggie Phair Institute for Democracy and Human Rights. My mom loved tea and chocolate and cookies, and when she worked through the night, as was her wont, they were her constant companions. One of her friends from her college days, Bobby Blatt, recently recounted that my mom was a brilliant, wonderful, strong woman who was always trying to do good and change things. She said, her strength dominated the group, and when she made a suggestion, everyone really listened. My mom always told me that I was sui generis, or unique, but she's the one who set the example and allowed me to grow up that way. When I was a kid, I thought different meant disparate or peculiar, having negative connotations. But I eventually learned that it can also mean singular, extraordinary, original, and incomparable. That was my mom. Singular, extraordinary, original, and incomparable. She showed me that being different was really a good thing, which is a legacy that I pass on to my daughter, Sydney. And I'm just going to turn the screen because, well, oh, it's on. Well, then I found this other poem and I put it on the other slideshow because I thought it was really great. But this is by Felix Adler, who was the founder of Ethical Culture, who she used to take me to where she used to take me sometimes when I was young. And it says, the dead are not dead if we love them truly. In our own lives, we can give them a kind of immortality. Let us arise and take up the work they have left unfinished. And here's Sydney.
Okay. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. All right. Hi, everybody. So I know that many of you probably know a lot about my grandma's accomplishments. So I wanted to talk a little bit about who she was in private. So as a grandma, I was still really aware of her work and her activism and, many of her more professional accomplishments. And, this was always a true north for me in my life to determine what was just and right and what was a good use of my time. And I think that's something that I'll continue to hold with me. But she was also really fun. As a kid, I remember going to her apartment, which was always full of toys like kaleidoscopes, puzzles, and nesting dolls. I remember taking trips to LACMA and going on roller coaster rides where she would go down the steep hills of Echo Park very fast in her car. And I remember going to solstice parties at her house on Christmas Eve, which were always full of the most interesting people. As many of you guys know, my grandma was extremely practical and very pragmatic, but that's not to say that she was not a loving person. Even though we had to teach her throughout my life that she should say, I love you too, when we told her we loved her. And she did get there. She always showed her love. So I think one story I wanted to share that really shows this is when I was going to college, the night before I left for college, she said, I have something for you, and please come to my room and see me when you have a moment. And I went to her room and she had a big manila envelope full of 50 different pens, and each pen no two matched. And she had been collecting them for months because she knew I was going to college, I was going to need to write papers, and I was going to need pens. So she had put so much love and care into making sure that that was a need that was going to be met. Another way that she would always show that she loved us was by giving her highest compliment, which was very good.
Very good.
My grandma is obviously going to be so missed, but I am really lucky to keep her with me in a very practical sense. When she needed to tell us something, sorry.
It's okay. When she needed, I can't finish your sentence. I don't know. When she needed to tell us something. Oh, she would always write notes. Oh, she would always write notes.
She would write me notes. And I've had a large collection of these, and they're always printed out and typed on the typewriter or the computer. And they're always very specific. They have very specific instructions, like here's how to install your air conditioner and specifically which one to buy, or here's how you should outfit your apartment, mostly with plywood.
And bricks.
And bricks and sawhorses. So I always also can't forget who wrote these notes. They were always signed from Maggie Phair, aka your grandma.
Just in case. Okay, that's it. Sydney loved her grandma very much. Well, there. Okay. All right, Shannon, you're up.
All right. Thank you very much, Maggie and Sydney. Thank you for your memories of both your mother and your grandmother. Yeah, you guys definitely got to know her in a way that we didn't. There was some moments in there I was like, yeah, that's very good. Yeah, you're right. She would say that. Or, yeah, I was gonna talk about some notes too that I would get from her. But for next, we're gonna have Sydney Gordon. Let me ask you to unmute here. And Sydney, I said Sydney, huh? I'm sorry. Cindy Gordon, I apologize. Knew Maggie from the Peace and Freedom Party. And let's see if it's gonna let me spotlight you. All right, here. And again, here's Cindy. I apologize. I'm kind of nervous too. I apologize. Cindy Gordon from the Peace and Freedom Party.
Hi. I first met Maggie in the Peace and Freedom Party in 1992. And it's really interesting that her family used the term phlegmatic to describe her, because that's really what she was. She was unflappable. In 1992, the Peace and Freedom Party was in danger of having its ballot line stolen by a weird cult that had joined the party en masse and was trying to basically steal the ballot line. And so Maggie, in combination with Adele Cannon and Marsha Fineland, who's also here tonight, these women would caucus and plot everything that was needed to do to block what this cult was doing, so that ultimately the Peace and Freedom Party was able to retain its ballot line and continue. And I remember Maggie's pragmatic, phlegmatic, insightful, direct ways of going about it. She was unflappable. And mostly I remember that Maggie did what we all as activists want to do. She cloned herself. I would be talking with her in the Peace and Freedom Party office about a situation, or on the phone about a situation. And she always knew which assignments or to give to which people, how to develop various comrades based on who they were personally. And for a long time, she was the person who took out all the paperwork to run everybody for Central Committee. After a while, she started showing me how to do that, and I became the person. And so for a long time, Peace and Freedom Party had a Central Committee because of what Maggie Phair was able to show me about dealing with the various levels of bureaucracy in the election office. I think, and I've heard stories like this from other people who knew Maggie in Los Angeles, or from the Socialist Party and other organizations. And I know she cloned a lot of activists and organizers. And that's what we all try to do. So that's what I remember her for. That's all.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, the clones. Definitely. That's. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's definitely what she did. Next up, we have Bill Shakalis. I hope I said it right. No, yeah. I apologize. I'm a teacher, and the first day of school, you always got that where some names, and my own family, my wife, my kids, and even me, being a male with the name Shannon, we got strange names. But so I always try to get names right. Bill knew Maggie from the Socialist Party. They were co-chairs. They go back to the 70s, I believe, early 70s, when I was really small. So here's Bill. Oh.
Hi everybody. I'm on the East Coast, so it's interesting to see Maggie's life and family from the West Coast. And but I knew Maggie through the Socialist Party USA. Probably more like 1980 on. She joined the party with Mick Reynolds and Vern Davidson and others in their early 50s, 1950s. So she was a member for a long time before I came along. And when the party reorganized as the through the Deb Caucus in 1973, it became Socialist Party, USA. While other branches went off to DSA, Michael Harrington's group, Democratic Socialists of America. But for those of us who wanted an independent socialist party in the Debsian sense, this attracted me. And I forget when I first met Maggie, probably 80, 81, maybe 81 at a NC, a National Committee meeting. I ran for state senate in 1982, got 12% of the vote out of Cambridge. I lived in Cambridge for a long time, now I'm in Connecticut. But the big event was really 1983 when a left caucus in the party was formed and people wanted to make some improvements. The statement of principles was not quite what it could be. So they put forward a document, Socialism as Radical Democracy, which is what we currently have. And structural changes, so we would have male and female representation on the National Committee and any other committees, so there'd be gender balance. That was a good socialist feminist principle. And it turned out that Maggie and I were co-chairs. So we had a new younger member and myself, and we had somebody from, well, I could say the old guard, I guess, Maggie. And I see what people say when she was unflappable or phlegmatic. I wouldn't think of it that way, but maybe stolid in the good sense, you couldn't, she saw the situation, she wasn't, she's unflappable in that regard and great for working with people. So we got through that difficult convention, adopting those principles and so on. Some of the old guard people were a little upset about this, but Maggie was there to really keep the ship right, I guess, in a lot of ways. So it was great working with her from 83 to 87. And I suppose you can go back to all the minutes of the National Committee meetings, the convention, to really see what went on and bring back events. But a couple of things come back to me working with Maggie. I always wanted, we needed to have an activist party. So the SP was meeting in DC, in Washington, DC. And someone got the idea, let's protest apartheid. And by doing so, you go to the South African embassy in DC. It was illegal to go up to the door because you had to keep away from 500 feet or thereabouts. And you'd be arrested if you did. So we all knew this would be civil disobedience, nonviolent civil disobedience, and we all got arrested, Maggie and everybody. So, they put the cuffs on us, the plastic cuffs, and we're on the paddy wagon. So there's Maggie having a meeting organized of the National Action Committee. We're having a meeting on our way to jail. It was the funniest thing. When we got to the jail, the booking sergeant was there and asking everybody, okay, what's your name, address, social security number. When Maggie was asked of that, she refused to give her social security number. And he was incensed. How can you do this? And Maggie patiently explained, it is my right based on court cases. I don't have to give you my social security number. She never did. So that was quite something. Having been in Corps, maybe got arrested before, et cetera, she was unflappable in the best sense. And that's what helped us so much. And then another time too, we're meeting in New York City, and I was very critical of DSA because they were stealing our thunder and so on. Michael Harrington was the leader of that group, but he was getting ill, dying of cancer. So Maggie said, okay, let's go to this. We're gonna go to a meeting. So she gets me in, and we find the place, and I'm not sure where we're going. Well, it's the DSA meeting in New York City. And she has me be introduced to Michael Harrington. So I grudgingly shook his hand, and everything. And that was Maggie's way of teaching me a few things. but she was great to work with. And she kept the SP alive and passed along a lot of the experience and knowledge from the older generation to the newer members that were coming in. So it was great being national co-chair with her. And SP continues today, and we have that same male-female balance. I passed along, you probably saw her in chat, her excellent statement on feminist process. Maybe you can't see that. I'm not sure that's coming through. But anyway, the link is there. And it's the best document I've ever saw about how to use feminist process in meetings, how to, practical advice. And it was all put together beautifully. So I invite everybody to read that and adopt it to whatever meeting you're in, small committees, larger political committees, whatever it may be. It's an excellent guide to keeping a feminist process, something us men need to know. How do you do this? And this shows, and that's Maggie educating us even today. So I'm very appreciative of that. And if you're been a member of the SP in the past, up your dues, stay with us, and we need to continue on. We have a lot of fights going on. You have to fight neo-fascism and continue for political, economic, and social democracy in the United States. So Maggie, I always will remember.
Thank you, Bill. Oops, sorry. All right. The next speaker I know quite well. I've known him my whole life. I've lived with him my whole life. It's myself. This is kind of nerve-wracking. My wife said something earlier, asked me if I was nervous, and I said, I don't know, or she asked me what was wrong. And I'm not, I don't know if it's nervous, but I just don't think I can do justice in 10 minutes. I wrote down notes and I had to keep going, this is gonna take too long, this is gonna take too long. I just can't tell you everything that Maggie did for me. So I'm looking at the time. I'm gonna try to time myself and cut some stuff out. It will seem like it's kind of rambling maybe, but that's kind of how my learning experience with Maggie was. There was no here to there kind of thing. It was this week we're gonna do this, and this week we're gonna do that. And sometimes I knew what she was teaching me, and other times it's taken 20 years. I'm like, man, she was teaching me something that day. And that's just what happened. So that's probably how my 10 minutes is going to go as well. Again, my name is Shannon Hammock. My current position, of course, is the president of the Maggie Phair Institute. She asked me to do that. That's a great honor. It's a way that I can continue to honor her. It's something I take very seriously. I plan to keep taking it seriously. But that's why I'm talking today. That's my credentials there. So my background real quick. When I was younger, I was a, I guess, angry young punk. And I know that because Maggie told me so. Those were her words. I was only 21 when I met her. And let me step back a second, why I was an angry young guy. I'm from Fontana, and for those who don't know about Fontana, if you've ever read Mike Davis's City of Quartz, there's a chapter in there called Junkyard of Dreams, and that's Fontana. I grew up about 2 blocks from Kaiser Steel Mill, the largest steel mill west of the Mississippi. And when I was about 8, it went bankrupt, basically losing all the jobs in the town. My family was union carpenters, and about that same time, there was a housing crisis and they lost their jobs. Where I grew up was in the unincorporated area, mostly, working class steel workers, a lot of immigrants. I grew up eating burritos and and playing soccer and stuff like that with my friends who at the time I didn't know their legal status. It didn't even occur to me. I just knew they were my friends. But when I was about 10 or 11, I moved to the good part of town where my grandparents had lived. And that was about 2 blocks from the leader of the Ku Klux Klan in Fontana, who had built a Southern colonial antebellum, house. And when I was a kid, we still had Klan marches and stuff like that. And so I saw a lot of this stuff. And for whatever reason, in my mind, I think very black and white, right and wrong. And this stuff was wrong to me. And then I had a social studies teacher, and I'm not sure how he had a job there in Fontana, but for that 1 year, and I think it only lasted like 2 years, he would teach us about colonialism and stuff going on in Africa. And he had us do this experiment on apartheid. So I learned about Nelson Mandela. And so this is the 80s, right? And so I'm learning about, at the time, Amnesty International and Greenpeace. And in school, for one of my things, I read, like Animal Farm. And I just read a lot. And I remember one time I was reading, it's just like a biography of Karl Marx in a class. I don't know why. And, the teacher comes up and says, you should be expelled for reading that. I was just reading it. But then after that, I was like, well, this guy must be cool if you're going to kick me out of school just for reading a book about him. So, I had my authority issues probably in school. Then it came time for me to go to college. I couldn't really go to college. I had no money. And so I joined the Army. And I got out of came back from the Army, started going to school, kept reading more. Everyone who I liked seemed to be a socialist, whether it was Bertrand Russell or Percy Shelley, kind of a proto-socialist back in the day. Martin Luther King. I read about Eugene Debs. I was big in American history. I got my graduate degree in American history. And just everyone that I read was socialist. And so there was an ad in the Nation magazine. It said, learn about democratic socialism. And so I wrote to the person, and it happened to be this guy named Don Buskey out in Pennsylvania. And we started writing back and forth, and this was pre-internet days. And finally he told me, there's this lady you need to talk to in LA. So I said, okay. And I called her up, and I can still remember in my room saying, hello, ma'am, I was told to call you. And she goes, oh, Maggie. And we just started talking. And then we would talk, I don't know, once a month, something like that. And then she found out I was still in the Army. I was in the reserves. And my drill unit was LA County USC Medical Center. And so she would pick me up there because I'd get a ride in, stay the weekend at her house. And she would pick me up, give me a place to stay, and we would start my political education. She would pick me up. I'd still be wearing my uniform, and she's like, we're gonna go to a picket line tonight. I was like, I'm still in my uniform. She's like, well, take your jacket off, we're going. And I'd sit there with a picket sign in my Army uniform, but at least without my jacket, so no one could see my unit and my name and stuff. Or, she would, different demonstrations, different political talks, just over anything you can imagine. She would take me. I remember one time we went to this, I remember telling her, I go, why are you taking me to rich people's house? It was someone, I remember her telling me, they're in the industry, entertainment industry in LA, and they got contacts and we're gonna go. And we went, and I was there in my Army uniform playing charades with people. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And they were artsy people. And then, every time we would go somewhere, it was like, oh, that's Maggie. Oh, that's Maggie. And everyone knew who Maggie was. And I became convinced that she seemed like everyone in LA. So then she let me start staying at her home longer. There'd be weeks in the summer or when I wasn't in class. And, an hour or two with her was worth a semester in political science class. I remember one time she asked me, if you could change one thing about Fontana, what would you change? I was still an angry young punk. And I said, burn it down. I don't think I was completely kidding at the time, and she did scold me, but she said, that's not the answer. And I was like, I felt kind of stupid. I was like, here I was like being, a punk. I was like, just, angry, burn it down. I don't care. And it's a good thing we didn't burn it down because I still live there. But so we spent probably 5 hours, because it was the entire night, past midnight, talking about neighborhood clinics, after school programs for kids, art activities for schools on the kids on the weekend, youth programs, youth sports programs. How do you create neighborhood councils so people feel more in touch with their neighborhoods and community? I mean, it was eye-opening. I was stuff I had never thought of. And she was like, well, why don't you think about this? Or why don't you go back home and do this? And so some stuff I did, and I got involved in different community groups, anti-racist groups and stuff like that. Cindy said something about Central Committee. So I think it was 96. I get a phone call from Maggie, and she said, you're going to be on the Central Committee. I was like, I don't have a car. I can't drive to San Bernardino. I mean, San Bernardino's not far from me, maybe half an hour. She drove all the way out here, then drove the other half hour to the county registrar's office, had me fill out all the paperwork, say, this is what you're going to do. You can either pay a filing fee, but you ain't got money, so you got to get this many signatures. And so then I got the roll, the register, the roll call voters, Peace and Freedom voters in my area. And she had me go and talk to people. I'm not very good talking to strangers. And, I didn't get that gift from her because she could talk to anybody, it seemed like. But she made sure that I was on it. I was elected. I went to the Peace and Freedom Convention that year up in, I believe, San Francisco. Other things she would do, like a Sunset Hall. Somebody in one of the comments earlier when they registered mentioned Sunset Hall, which was this retirement home, a bunch of lefty who would retire, and she would drive me there and say, you're going to talk to them. I believe she may have been on the board of directors or some committee or something. And so there I would go and talk to these people who had been in, you name it, any type of cause in the last 60, 70 years. And for someone who was interested in history, I got to know people who were involved in every type of action, like I said, for the better half of the 20th century. So that was a great education as well. Another thing she did was she called me up one time and said, hey, you want to go to Cuba? And I said, well, I don't got any money. Still poor kid. I had the GI Bill, but it only paid me a couple $100 a month. So she said, well, if you can get the plane ticket, we're going to get together and raise you money to go to Cuba for the World Festival of Students, Youth and Students. And I did. I went for 2 weeks, about 15,000 students from around the world, talked about politics and culture. Another great experience that, I can't even imagine having been able to do that. I was joking with Catherine, and Sydney's not going to remember this, but I even babysat Sydney when she was like 3, 4, 5 years old, several times. She would pick me up and say, come on, we're going to my daughter's house and we're going to babysit my granddaughter, and then we're going to go to this protest. I said, okay. So, we'd drive out there and drive back to Hollywood or somewhere in LA. But it wasn't all politics. And I want to acknowledge that I wasn't always just about politics with her, at least with me, She loved to eat, it seemed, because every time we would go to any type of protest, I got to try something new. And she didn't seem to mind I was a vegetarian. I don't think she quite understood it, but But we would go to Cantor's. I had never been to a Jewish deli before. We don't have too many of those out in Fontana. House of Pies, I remember that. And these are all places I've taken my family since then. I was like, hey, Maggie took me, and then we go to LA. And I go, you gotta try this place out. Little Joe's is an Italian place in Chinatown, which always cracked me up. She's like, oh, you gotta try this here. I remember a place called Palermo, Italian place, and I think Las Feliz, something like that. But you know, just like when I would go to her house and I had to have cookies, if we went out, I had to eat. And so I got to try all kinds of stuff in LA. She liked theater. I remember her, there was like Peace and Freedom fundraisers. I remember going seeing like a Sondheim theater that, or a play that was being done in some community theater, and going there. She really wanted me to go see The Bicycle Thief. So I went to this, you know, retro theater in LA to go watch The Bicycle Thief, because all these, you know, post-war films that she wanted me to know about. She loved music. We went to Hootenannies, so play, you know, folk music and stuff. I remember her taking me to see Paul Baker before he was going down to Nicaragua. I was really big into Victor Jara, and so to meet someone who had was kind of inspired him was huge for me. And then she took me to see Billy Bragg at the House of Blues. And then years later, she wrote me, there was an article about how the House of Blues might be moving and selling out. And she was mad and says, can you believe they're doing this? My proudest accomplishment with Maggie was about 15 years later. So I'd already been married, had kids, you know, this is a long time later. I was at her house and we were talking, and she said, you're not the angry young man I met. And I was like, what? I had kind of forgot. And I was like, what are you talking about? I still care. I still think there's wrongs. I'm still fighting capitalism. And she's like, no, that's not what I mean. She goes, you're just not angry anymore. She goes, you still care, but you're not angry anymore. And so I was, you know, I had to sit there and think, because I was like, what does this mean? But now thinking about it, that was like maybe 10 years ago. It really, like I said, it took me a long time to see some stuff, and to see that she saw the change in me was pretty cool. There's 3 things I want to leave about Maggie that people have touched upon, and that I think, or at least is her legacy to me, and I just want to quickly mention them, is education, not formal education like college degrees, but lifelong learning. Like I said, she had the Socratic method down. Whew, she asked me a lot of questions, and she wouldn't take, I couldn't just say, I don't know. And she's like, well, what do you think about this? I don't know. No, what do you think about it? What is it? You know, just question after question after question. She was always reading. I'd go to her house, and man, if there wasn't 10 newspapers and magazines and books open on her table with notes and post-it notes, and with questions like, why this? What are they going to do about this? I couldn't understand it, because she would pick me up from the army drills. We'd go to a protest, we'd go eat, we'd talk till like midnight. I had to be back up at like 5 in the morning. And then I honestly, at one time, I thought she never slept, because I'd wake up and she was already up reading the newspaper. Just learning really mattered to her. And even after I didn't get to see her as much, I was married and was out here in Fontana more, she was still sending me packets of clippings cut out with post-it notes, or just writing on the newspapers, what do you think we can do about this? Why are they doing this? Hey, this is in Fontana. She said, yourself, guys are still making the newspapers. You know, if they had done this, you guys should, you know, whatever. So that's one thing. The second thing, generosity. It's already been mentioned. She was so generous with her time. With me, I know that to be true. She spent way more time on me than I I don't know. I think I probably deserve. I don't know, but with everybody, she was like that with everybody. Not just her time, but you know, if you wanted to use Hauser, the building on Hauser and Adams, I think every group in LA used it or her house. I truly am convinced that half the population of LA has stayed at her apartment on Reservoir Street. Because when I was reading the notes, when people are registering, I stayed at her house once. She took me in. I mean, I stayed sometimes nights, sometimes weeks. I mean, I spent a lot of time for a period of 4 or 5 years. I was there a lot, but she didn't care. She had her roommates like Woodrow. Somebody mentioned Woodrow Coleman, and I just want to acknowledge him too because he was a great guy, and he stayed at her house, and he was just a great guy. And lastly, humanity. She truly did believe in people. She treated people like people, not as pawns, like how can we use these people to advance this political cause, or how can we do this? She accepted people as people. It's been mentioned a couple of times, even if she disagreed with you in politics, it didn't matter. She still, I mean, she did a much better job of this than me. I wish I could do this as well as she did. She just could talk to everybody. And I think it's something I've learned a lot from is, you know, you're not in the politics to score points or to get power. You're to make sure that you're there to hopefully make sure other people have that power for their own lives. Yeah. And along with that is when I got married, she made me make her a promise. And that promise was that when I had kids, I would quit politics. She said too many leftist, activist men had cheated their families. They weren't there for them. And she didn't think that was right. She thought people were more important than even politics. And so she made me promise that I would not be the activist I was anymore. So I kept my promise. My kids were born. I wasn't in any parties. I didn't do much, little things here and there maybe. So I'm not trying to say that to say I was a perfect dad, but I was a much better dad because of Maggie, because she made me realize that people were important. And so I was there for my kids' events. I was there to volunteer in their class when they were in primary school. I was there as their coach for different sports. I was there as my son's scoutmaster. And that was really important. And she gave me that gift, and that's an amazing gift to me. I want to finish this up with, I think I may have mentioned this person earlier. If not, I meant to. Percy Shelley, who is my poet. I just thought he was amazing. And I read this when I was in high school. It's apocryphal because there's no way we know that Shelley actually wrote this, but it was in one of his biographies. And it struck me as a high schooler. I hadn't met Maggie yet, so I had no way of knowing I was going to meet someone like her. But I think this sums up Maggie. And supposedly in the biography, this was a vow that Shelley made when he was in school, high school probably, and this is what it said. I swear to be just and wise and free, if such power in me lies. I swear never to become an accomplice, even by my silence, of the selfish and the powerful. I swear to dedicate my whole life to the worship of beauty. And that's what I saw in Maggie. That's what inspired me with her. And she taught me to do that as well. So, and I apologize for going on way too long, but, and I still don't think that did Maggie justice, to be honest with you. All right. So the next thing we're gonna do right now is we're gonna play a song. Like I said, she loved music, and she was a leftist, and there's a song that's very traditional for us. For the more traditional among us, I apologize. This is Billy Bragg's modern version of it. but it does mean a lot to me because, like I said, I did go see Billy Bragg with Maggie, and we would play Billy Bragg a lot. And so let me stop my video and I'll put the video on. I mean, yeah, I'll put the video on. Thank you.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no rights. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The Internationale unites the world in song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, they must give. And then the vanity of nations, we make one earth on which to live. So come brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The Internationale unites the world in song. So comrades, rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. Although they offer us concessions, change will not come from above. So come brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The Internationale unites the world in song. So comrades, rally, for this is the time and place. The
Ooh. All right, I'm back. All right. Oh, wait.
There you are, Mr. Crenshaw. I pounded on your door. I didn't hear you answer. What am I going on?
Sorry about that. That wasn't part of the international. All right. So now what we'd like to do is open up the floor, as it were. I'm going to try to find the video and find the name of the people who said they would like to talk. And when they registered, if you'd like to do it as well now, and you earlier said you weren't interested, sorry about that. Please let me know in the chat room, and then I'll add your name, and we'll do it that way. Let's see. And Janie May?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. For
And-
those of you who don't know me, and most of you don't, Maggie was my aunt. She was married to my uncle Eddie, who was my father's brother. And I have two very short Maggie stories, which are from the 60s, which probably predate most of you, but they have stayed with me. One of the things, I grew up in New York, and half our family was in California, half of them were in New York. But I did have the opportunity to spend a lot of my summers in California and got to know that part of the family. And I remember very vividly one time, one summer when I was visiting Maggie and Eddie and having dinner at their house. And I was probably 15 or 16 years old. And on the table in a plastic container, the way people would have lemonade or orange juice or anything like that, Maggie said, "Would you like some?" And I said, "Sure, why not? What is it?" And she said, "Mai Tais. I make them by the pitcherful." And I said, "Well, I'm only 15 years old." And she said, "Oh, that's okay. You can have it anyway." And it kind of points up that she always treated me as an adult, even if I was a kid. And I always appreciated that. And even though she wasn't the most glamorous of my aunts, she certainly was the most avant-garde, and I appreciated her for that. The other thing I'd like to share with you, which looking back now with an adult's eyes, I wish I had known more about, was a cocktail party that I went to at their house. And it probably was, I'm going to say 1965 or 1966. Again, I was fairly young. And at the party, among others, were some Black men. And that was really unusual at that time. And I learned after, well, I might have learned it then, that they were part of the Black Panther organization. And for those of you who don't remember or don't know, that was a Black revolutionary socialist organization. And I kind of am sorry that I didn't have the knowledge to go up to some of these gentlemen and talk to them, because chances are they were very instrumental in that movement, either in Los Angeles or maybe even in Oakland, where the party originated. And the other thing, which kind of shocked me, was, as I said, she was very avant-garde. And during this particular party, there were women who were breastfeeding their babies. And this was something that I had never seen, being fairly sheltered and fairly young. So in any case, and over the years, I've always been fortunate enough to visit with her whenever I came to LA. Kathy and Sydney were lovely. We always went out somewhere and did something, and I will treasure all of those outings. So thank you for the opportunity to speak about her.
Sorry about that.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're talking about people she had at her house. This is the only thing that impressed my daughter. I mean, not that, I would tell her about Maggie, and, my daughter's only 19 and kind of a teenager, right? She's like, I don't know. But when I told her she passed away and just some of the stuff she did, I said, yeah. And, Bernie Sanders stayed at her house one time. And my daughter was like, what? And my daughter was impressed. So yeah, you can meet all kinds of people at Maggie's house. All right. Next we have Marsha Feinland. I hope I didn't say that wrong.
Hi. Yeah, you got it right.
Ah, yes.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Maggie and the Peace and Freedom Party, and then also some personal memories. So Maggie ran for more than just Congress in 1990. She was in the Peace and Freedom Party from the beginning. She ran for Congress twice in 1980 and in 1990, and for the 45th Assembly District in 1982. And I'm sure she ran not for a personal glory, but to help the party, to make the party known. And it was really interesting. Maggie was in the Peace and Freedom Party, and she was also in the Socialist Party. And she understood how to function in a multi-tendency party, which the Peace and Freedom Party was. She could work with people in the Communist Party, in the Socialist Party, in anarchists, anyone who came into the Peace and Freedom Party, as long as they wanted to build the Peace and Freedom Party. And as Cindy Gordon mentioned, she also knew how to strategize and how to fight if it was necessary in order to keep the party intact, because there were people in groups that joined the party not necessarily to build the party. And actually, Cindy gives me some credit for that. The credit actually goes to my late husband, Tom Condit, who was at one time in the Socialist Party and then also in other groups, but he really brought me into the Peace and Freedom Party. And he helped me to meet Maggie Phair. And that brings me to the personal part. I first met Maggie actually before I even joined the Peace and Freedom Party's Central Committee. There were Socialist Party campouts there were some at Big Sur, and then later they were at, there was one at Mount Tamalpais State Park. And Maggie organized those. And she really practiced her socialist beliefs on a personal level as well as on a political level. At the campouts, there was cooperative cooking and meal sharing. And I see that Frank Beheim is here. He's like an excellent cook, and he was there at those campouts also and helped to cook the meals. But we all brought ingredients, and it didn't matter what we brought. Frank and Maggie figured out how to make a meal out of it. It was really incredible. I was at the time the mother, I started out, maybe my son was about 7 years old. And he would run around, and sometimes we would come to the camp with his friend. We would bring a friend as well as him. And they'd be getting up early and running around and making noise. And I kind of felt bad. And I said to Maggie, I'm so sorry about the noise. And she said, no, that's good noise. Because she really understood children and how children were a part of our family, whether it was political, social, or anything like that. People talk about how they stayed at her home. The whole Alameda County Central Committee stayed at Maggie's apartment on Reservoir Street. So we had maybe 4, 5, 6 people come up from Alameda, come down to Los Angeles from Alameda County for meetings. And we'd all stay at Maggie's. I mean, we slept on the floor. She gave us food. It was incredible. Maggie Phair, I just want to say she was a socialist through and through, and we will definitely miss her.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have, oops, sorry about that. Mindy Pines. So let me unmute you, and there's got to be a better way for me to find them.
Here I am.
Oh, there you are. I don't know if that helped or not, but now I found you. There you go.
Thank you. Maggie was the real deal. I've known a lot of folks who espoused one flavor or another of socialist politics or ideology, but didn't necessarily treat others accordingly. But Maggie walked the talk. She treated others with compassion and respect. Regardless of their political views, she treated others well when nobody was looking. And I'm one of the countless others who Maggie took in when we needed a place to stay while we got back on our feet. I'm certain there's some folks in this group or among this group, Frank, hi Frank, and et cetera. And to Kathy and Sydney, I'm deeply sorry for your loss. I and many others may not be related to you biologically, but Maggie always made us feel like family. We grieve with you. Rest in power, Maggie. We love you. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you. Next will be, oh, I don't know why on this side it's alphabetical and this side it's not. Is Bobby Blatt? Let me place spotlight. There.
Most of you folks knew her as Maggie from Echo Park. But I knew her as Margaret from Ocean Park. And I met her back in 1952, almost 70 years ago, when she came to New York. And I was 16 years old. Yipso, and I got a job at the Socialist Call, which was the newspaper. Margaret was also a Yipso and a volunteer in the national office. And like any radical group, we were loud, we were idealists, we were impulsive, we had outlandish ideas, and there was much, much too much rhetoric. Margaret was the calm in this storm, the stable one, the wise one, the mature one, the adult in the room. I thought she was amazing. She was only 21. Margaret introduced me to my husband. She even played Cupid. That fall of 52, Margaret was going back to Los Angeles, so she threw a big farewell party, as only Margaret can do, in the basement of her apartment in Brooklyn. And she introduced me to John Blatt, who was going to be driving back to Los Angeles with her. And when she saw he was getting interested in me, she teasingly cautioned him not to get too friendly. She said, "Be careful, she's jailbait. You'll have to wait a few years." And so 4 years later, when I wrote to her that I was coming to Los Angeles, she made sure Johnny was at the airport to pick me up. And 6 weeks later, she attended our wedding. Margaret, in the fall of 52, was driving back to Los Angeles with Harvey Berman, Noel, at that time her name was Oliver, and John Blatt in a mini Hillman Minx that had a history of blowing a head gasket on the slightest incline. I remember the night they left New York for LA. Margaret made this huge bag of tuna fish sandwiches, and she had a giant, large salami. The trip, you know, she was going to make sure that if the car broke down, the people were not. She was going to make sure they were well fed. The trip and the car were so memorable, they all talked about it for years after. When I informed Noel the other day of Margaret's death, she was so sad and she sighed and she said, "Oh my, she was the last of my fellow passengers on that amazing trip." Dave McReynolds was a very, very close friend and a colleague of Margaret's. And in his book, oh, you can't read it, it's backwards. We've been invaded by the 21st century. He had a tribute to Margaret, and I think he's not with us anymore, but I would like to read his tribute. "I became a radical because of Margaret Fagan, née Phair, who invited me to a party in Ocean Park. Was it 1950? And when I came, timid and trembling, to the door of what I knew would be a wild, bohemian, free-loving, radical party whose guests would laugh at me, she came forward at once, took my 6-pack of Cokes in one hand and said, "David, I'll just put these in the refrigerator so they'll stay cold. But would you mind standing here for a while, welcoming people as they come in? Some of those who are coming are very shy and don't really know anyone." That evening was my introduction to socialist Bohemia, a state of mind better than any fraternity, more exclusive, with remarkably little in the way of sex or liquor, and in those days, no pot at all. But that was into poetry, art, writing, and socialist politics. She lived at 132.5 Ashland Avenue. We called it Ashcan Alley, Ashland Avenue in Ocean Park, with its termites, paper-thin walls, and calcimite paint. Most of her comrades from UCLA and the Socialist Party, Dave McReynolds, Vern Davidson, Jerry and Johnny Blatt, Harvey and Marsha Berman, the Goldfarbs, the Backuses, Lois Caceres, Noel, all were drawn to her. They all moved to the area, to Ocean Park or Venice. And she and her house were the center of all activity. David said in his memoir, "I'm sure it was the only house that ever got put on a blacklist by the UCLA student government." I have many memories of her and her coolness, her sensibility, her ability to solve problems. And one that's a personal one for me was, we were upstate New York trying to get signatures to put the Socialist Party on the ballot. And we were in this dinky town, and we had this really seedy hotel room, and the knock on the door with police. And I, of course, panic. And Margaret, as calm as can be, just shoved me through the window onto the fire escape, threw all the petitions in my hand, closed the window and the curtains, and went and opened the door and greeted the police as if they were long lost friends. She was just the most amazing person. And that's why she was the epitome of the 3 Ps: practical, pragmatic, problem solver. That was our Margaret, your Maggie.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Yeah, to have been able to know her back in the 50s would have been amazing.
We're very old.
I wasn't trying to say that. It's just,
Well, it's you just do the math.
next up will be Joe Maislish.
Yep, that's right. Hello, everyone. Here's a beautiful picture of Maggie, taken by Ed Hedeman of the War Resisters League, and I don't know if Catherine would like to have it, but I'll be glad to send it if I figure out a way. Maybe Shannon, I think I may have Shannon's email address, or else Bob, who I see is on this call, Bob Miola, would have it. So I'll be very glad to send that. It's one of a few that were taken one day about, I don't know, 12 years, 14 years, whatever ago. at the LA airport when a couple of people from New York War Resisters League, Ed and Ruth, came through. And so Maggie and I and a friend from Los Angeles, Doris McDaniels, went to greet them and have a series of photos. And I'm telling you that about going to greet because it supports, it fits with something that we've heard from several people today about Maggie's personal connections and how important those things were to her. And I was lucky to be one of the people not as closely connected over the years, but from the probably late 1970s on through till a few years ago, connected through David McReynolds of the War Resisters League and through the small amount of league activities that we did here in Los Angeles from the 70s into the 90s, let's say. But I kept connected with Maggie after that. One of the things that we shared was that when our friend Doris died in 2006, or when she was getting ill, Maggie and I shared being the people who handled Doris's estate. So then again, Maggie's connection and feeling of responsibility towards people extended beyond their lifetimes. And for months afterwards, Maggie, principally with a little help from me, was doing things like handling Doris's affairs and her little house. So that's another illustration of that person. And there are people living with Maggie in her place. I remember especially Woodrow Coleman, who lived for quite a while in Echo Park. Again, it's a bit of the story that many of you have given more of today. I want to give some detail of one thing that Maggie did tell me about past adventures. It was something mentioned by, was it Catherine or maybe Catherine's daughter, the integration of the Wilshire store of Bullock's Wilshire. This was a campaign, I think in 1949, Maggie spoke about, a kind of a sit-in of white people and Black people, a small group, and they just sat, and they in the tea room at the store, up at the top of the store. Now it's the Southwestern School of Law, and eventually the management agreed to serve them. But what did they do? They realized they hardly had any money at all. All they could order was a half a grapefruit to share, I think. And Maggie told me with delight that when she dug her spoon into her part of the half a grapefruit, some of the juice squirted in her face. So that was humor, a story that she told me at least 30 years after it had happened, or 30 or 40 years after it had happened. I remember her at work in 84. I think the first computer that I saw an individual using was a K-Pro computer with a tiny screen, and in 1984, turning out all kinds of documents for whatever, for the organizations that have been mentioned here that I was not that much connected with, the Peace and Freedom Party. I was a registrant, and Socialist Party. So those are just a few examples of that, the charm, that willingness to share her space with others, and always to help organize in so many ways. Just from the point of view of another organization, hadn't been mentioned yet, War Resisters League, but I knew of her other activities too. What a delight she was, and she still is. So that's I think that's enough for me. I'll make way for some people who have maybe longer and other stories to tell about her. I just can't help smiling as I take a turn in this wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, great stories. Just the stuff she did. Next is going to be Dan Robrish. There it is.
Howdy. First of all, sorry about the way I'm dressed. The recommendation was to wear red or purple, and I didn't own any red or purple shirts, so I'm figured I briefly considered buying one, but thought it would be more appropriate to wear a red garment I already owned. At any rate, I stayed in Maggie's home from 1989 until 1992. And while living there, I was the Peace and Freedom Party's 1990 nominee for California State Assembly, which earlier someone mentioned the weird cult that was trying to take over the party. I defeated their person in the Peace and Freedom primary by, I think, 6 votes. So that was quite a squeaker. But Maggie was always incredibly supportive, and she was a great mentor to me as a young man, and I am proud to have known her, and I will miss her.
All right, thank you very much. Next, let's see. Bob Meola?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Let me see if I can find your...
So, if you can hear me, my computer tells me that there's an app blocking my camera so you can't see me.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry about that.
That's
I
okay.
have not figured out what the problem is. So in 1979, I lived in Echo Park. I knew Joe Maislish through anti-nuclear work, and it was a time when draft registration was coming back and Central America was on fire, and thanks to the usual pyromaniac in Washington. But anyway, I wanted to start a chapter of the War Resisters League in Los Angeles, and Joe and I and other people did that. But when I contacted War Resisters League, they put me in touch with David McReynolds, and we arranged for David to come speak at UCLA in the fall of '79. And upon starting up Southern California, War Resisters League Southern California, David introduced me and the rest of us to Maggie, and all the WRL meetings happened in Maggie's living room in 1980 and 81, and I don't know how much longer, because in September '81, I left Los Angeles for Santa Cruz. So I always enjoyed our meetings in Maggie's living room. And also because David McReynolds was running for president on the Socialist Party USA ticket that year, even though I had thought I was long done with the alphabet soup of Marxist, Leninist, commies, Maoist, Trotskyist, commies, and had become an anarchist, I joined the Socialist Party USA to vote for David McReynolds in 1980. And so that kept me on the mailing list of the Socialist Party paper that Maggie put out for years. And I also was registered Peace and Freedom Party for the longest time. Well, Marcia knows that she collected my signature until she didn't, to try to keep the party on the ballot in Berkeley. But and anyway, in '86, I ended up in San Francisco, and what Cindy mentioned is 92. I was recalling is maybe 90, but Maggie got in touch with me to try to save the Peace and Freedom Party ballot line from I don't remember the name of that cult that was trying to take it over. But and I don't remember how I got to Sacramento, but Maggie made sure that I came to Sacramento to help vote to keep those people from taking over the Peace and Freedom Party. And so I got to spend, I don't know, however that was, I don't know if it's a couple of days, weekend, I don't know, but I got to see Maggie and a couple of other people that were with her that I knew from Los Angeles. And that was great. But it was distance that kept me from being in touch with Maggie. And then sometime in the early, I don't know, between 2000 and 2010 sometime, I'm married to someone who is from Los Angeles, and in visiting to LA, Sue and I went to visit Maggie, and it was the first time I'd seen her since that Central Committee time in Sacramento. And it was great visiting. And I think Joe and I had talked about visiting her too. And I don't know if that was before this visit or if I was talking about visiting her again. But it's been so many years since I've seen Joe now, and I don't get to LA as often anymore. But and there were emails after that visit in this century. I guess political emails from Maggie. And in recent years, I was aware of the Maggie Phair Institute online and on Facebook, and and I signed up for all that. But I, for the longest time, I've wondered, how's Maggie? Is Maggie still around? What's going on with Maggie? And I just hadn't really been in touch, but would leave a birthday greeting online that I figured she wasn't even seeing. But anyway, I was sorry to hear of Maggie not being on the planet anymore. And if it wasn't just time, but geographical distance, separated her from the rest of my life, being in Berkeley, and I guess not feeling like being a member of any political party anymore, because I guess my sect is anarchist communist. So I'm glad to be with all of you here in this celebration of Maggie.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Next up, we have Marcia Berman.
Am I unmuted? Hi. I think I've known Maggie for longer than anyone else here. I've known Maggie for more than 70 years. She was my brother Harvey's best friend in high school. And they went to San Fernando High School together, and they were bright, achieving students, and they stuck together. They were adventurous. They both went to UCLA. They were both 6 years older than me. So I think I probably met Maggie when I was 8 or 10, I don't know. It was quite a long time ago. They both went to UCLA, and during her college days, Margaret, as she was known, we like Bobby said, we knew her as Margaret. Margaret was living in Ocean Park, and when I was 13, she invited me to spend some time during the summer staying with her. So I did. And she steered me to a job at Jack's Bakery, a Jewish bakery on the boardwalk in Ocean Park. I worked there part-time, selling rye bread, challah, Danish pastry, and assuring the customers that all the baked goods were fresh made daily. That wasn't entirely true, but that's what Jack the baker insisted I say. And I think I stayed with Maggie for about a month. My mother, I think, had mixed feelings about my staying with Margaret, even though she admired Margaret and was probably glad to have me out of the house for a month and earning some money to boot. One of the things she said about Margaret that I did not fully understand at the age of 13 was that Margaret believed in free love. There was something that Emma Goldman believed. That's all I knew. She was still living in Venice, in Ocean Park, Venice, when I went to college a few years later. And after my first year of living in a co-op dorm, she found me a very bohemian place to live in Venice, near the place she was living then. She was then living on Brooks Avenue. The place she found me was a cold water storefront with a sleeping balcony. And I had to take showers at various friends' houses. Bobby Blatt was one of the friends where I took showers at the time. But I loved this place because I could have a piano there. And I remember renting a baby grand piano for about $15 a month at the time. Bobby also mentioned, well, she quoted David, who mentioned this infamous party in Ocean Park, where David greeted all the guests. That was where I met David also. I was 16 when I went to that famous party and got rather drunk there. But anyway, it was probably through Margaret that I came to know the group of young radicals, the socialists, the pacifists, the anarchists during my college years. Most of these people were living at the beach. And I can say that Margaret was really instrumental in forming my political and social attitudes. I maintained close friendships with many of those people over the years. Now there are just a few of us left, but those college years, they were unforgettable. So here's to Maggie, here's to her memory. Thanks.
Again, thank you. It's just amazing to hear about her from folks who have known her for so long. I think that's everyone that's asked or said they would like to speak, that I can find their names. If someone else would like to speak, you put it in the chat right now and I can spotlight you and unmute you. I'll give it a second here. I thought I saw something. If not, oh, okay. Hold on a second here. Let me. There you go.
So, wow, it was amazing to hear all these stories of my mom and Cindy's grandma. And I want to thank everybody for coming and thank you for sharing your stories, because some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know, but they were just really wonderful to hear. And so we just want to thank you all for being here.
Okay. All right. Okay, hold on a second here. We have another. Let me see if I can find. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, here, now I figured something out. Hold on. It's Nancy Lawrence.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, I can't see me. I don't know if you can see me or not.
You have an artsy
okay.
scarf or something.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with the technology, and I'm glad you spotted this. Okay, I'm just going to make a short speech. One of the things I remember about Maggie, all the wonderful Maggie stories. I'm going to add mine to this, and that is on the last years that she was politically active, and she was in a wheelchair. I had just come back from the Battle of Seattle, and I've been with her in the Peace and Freedom Party since '85. And I remember how she supported me in all the things in the 90s. The cult that tried to take over was called, by the way, the New Alliance Party. And oh boy, she fought against that. But she actually, I went to the Battle of Seattle. I was there for a week. When I came back, Maggie beat me to it, because next year there was one of these anti-capitalist globalization things in Washington, D.C. She went there with her in her wheelchair and got arrested. I mean, she would stop at nothing. She was amazing. I mean, she was fighting to the end. And boy, yes, I do remember those theater parties at her house, the Colony Theater, and we would see these wonderful plays. She would organize them starting with potluck, and then we would raise some money and get basically a free play. And she always had this little twinkle in her eye. She was full of mischief. And that was a wonderful, that twinkle I'll never forget. We always got to have mischief in the movement, and the revolutionists got to have a sense of humor. So that's all I have to say. I miss you, Maggie. That's it. Okay.
Next we have Frank. So let me.
It's your turn.
Hello?
Yeah. I can't spotlight you, Frank, because I don't think you have.
I think my video is off.
Okay. Go ahead and talk.
Well, I just want to say I met Maggie in 1980 through the Peace and Freedom Party. I think we were having a state meeting at UCLA, and several years later, she told me about a job I could get collecting signatures for Jobs with Peace. And I went on to collect 10,000 signatures with them, thanks to Maggie. She let me stay with her while I was doing that. And I was one of the many, many people that she helped that way. I want to say hi to Mindy and hi to Dan, and Marsha Feinland too. And she was the real deal. That's right. That's what she was, the real deal. She could tell the good people from the bad people in very short amount of time. And I'm glad to have known her. You know, she was really one of a kind and person that I was really saddened when you posted on Facebook about her death, Shannon. And so I want to thank you for hosting this meeting, and thank Kathy and Sydney for their remarks, and thanks to everybody for attending.
Thank you. That's again just great to hear about how Maggie touched so many lives. All right, I don't think there's any more that want to speak that I see. Again, on behalf of the Maggie Phair Institute, I want to thank everyone. I don't want to make it like a sales pitch. Go check out MaggiePhairInstitute.org. But she does live on. We have an educator. We're doing different work. There's a new podcast out. There's Facebook groups. I'm not saying we're doing as good a job as she would do, but we're trying to live up to what the standard she has set. So, did you want to say anything else, Catherine? No. Again, I want to thank also Catherine and Sydney, and all her other family members for being here as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the slideshow back on. So for those who may have come in a little late or just want to see the slideshow again, I'll go ahead and put that on right now. Give me a second here. And hopefully there's music again.
Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. C'est payé, balayé, oublié. Je me fous du passé. Avec mes souvenirs, j'ai allumé le feu. Mes chagrins, mes plaisirs, je n'ai plus besoin de balayer les amours avec leur trémolo, balayer pour toujours. Je repars à zéro. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Car ma vie, car mes joies, aujourd'hui, ça commence avec toi. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. C'est payé, balayé, oublié. Je me fous du passé. Avec mes souvenirs, j'ai allumé le feu. Mes chagrins, mes plaisirs, je n'ai plus besoin de balayer les amours avec leur trémolo, balayé pour toujours, je repars à zéro. Non, rien de rien, non, je ne regrette rien, ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien, non, je ne regrette rien, car ma vie, car mes joies, aujourd'hui, ça commence avec toi. Non, rien de rien, non, je ne regrette rien, ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien, non, je ne regrette rien, c'est payé, balayé, oublié, je me fous du passé, avec mes souvenirs, j'ai allumé le feu, mes chagrins, mes plaisirs, je n'ai plus besoin de balayer les amours avec leur drain.
You wanted to say something, Noel?
It would be anticlimactic after all I've heard this evening. What a beautiful tribute to Maggie.
I agree.
Well, okay, I'm so struck by, I wonder if any of the rest of you thought when you saw Sydney speaking, whether you saw a little of Margaret in her voice, in the way she said her words.
Aw.
I was so pleased to know what a great mom she had been and what a great grandmother, and that terrific advice she gave to Shannon when he had his kids. It just shows that to me she had it all straight, as she always did when I knew her back long before those events took place. But she certainly saw clearly, and I was privileged to have known her in her early days. Yeah. Thank you for this evening.
And thanks for getting your grandson to get you onto the Zoom meeting. Good job.
Yeah, I thank him also. Yes.
Yeah.
It's my
All
first.
right.
It's my very first Zoom meeting, but what a terrific one.
Oh, excellent.
Oh.
Yeah, just thanks everybody for coming. And yeah, my mom was a special, unique individual. Always did the right thing. So Shannon, I really appreciate you, and thanks for running everything. Thanks for organizing everything. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And yeah, okay, well, I will talk to you soon. And thanks again, everybody, for coming. And you people who are still here, troopers. But Shannon, you did a great job. I loved
Yeah.
everything that you said.
Good job, Shannon.
And I mean, it was really
Good job.
amazing to listen to all these stories. And, I wasn't there for lots of them. I mean, some of them I was. But thanks. My mother would be upset for my grammar. She'd be okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Been really nice.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.